Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome to another property live stream. This is Construction Matters with, of course, Hamish McClare of Surgical Bay, our illustrious master who has set up this thing with me in the first place. And special guest today, Rob Munns, Business Development Director. Now, of the BFT, in fact. What we're going to talk about today is really a question, and it's a question worth pondering after. Is the construction industry scared of change? Well, it certainly appears to be a little bit. And as ever, to start us off, Hamish McClare.
It's rather interesting, actually. Good afternoon to you all, of course. It's nice and sunny here in Oxfordshire. Just the sort of weather for, as I watch the people directly opposite me taking the scaffolding down from some work they were doing on roofs. Bloody noisy lot. But anyway, that was beside. The topic of our conversation is very much down the route of scaffolding. However, it does bring together some threads that we've just come to light over the last sort of 2 to 3 weeks. Last week, any of you listening in will recollect that we had one of our colleagues from Scotland speaking to us about what could be done with groundwater to actually improve the drainage aspect of developments, which is something which not enough people have picked up on, because we know it was going to save an awful lot of money to start off with, but an awful lot of developments that would otherwise sort of sink beneath the waves. Not exactly the waves, but one of the strange things we have actually sort of found, and Silas, one of our great sort of colleagues who will be with us later on in the week, said he was writing about things 25 years ago that would help in the world of construction. And all too often, we actually sort of find within the industry, people are not picking up on new ideas. What we do know is we've got some construction going on. It's a terrible mess, particularly to do with remediation. Now, interestingly enough, our particular topic of conversation can help down this route, but we won't be speaking about that so much today. What we want to speak about is how so often there are inbuilt methods maintained by many people involved with construction who want to retain the old methodology, whether it be for profits, whether it's because it's something they're used to. It very, very often is the case. But let us introduce actually Rob, who hadn't been with us previously, but hopefully we'll get him back again afterwards to speak about one of these methods which can use to make a significant difference within the construction industry, save time, effort, and probably ultimately the good health of people who are involved in things like remediation and construction at the same time.
Welcome, Rob, to the show. I'm glad you could make it. The topic today is the construction industry scared of change? And maybe we should change that to, is the construction industry scared to look back on what was working before and return to it?
Yeah, well, no, a very good afternoon. First and foremost, to you and everyone listening, it's a pleasure to be invited onto the podcast, to be honest. I guess a very quick introduction, almost just to verify my qualifications to answer the question. I've actually been with BFT Mast Climbing for 6 years, so not a lot in the grand scheme of things. One of the reasons why that was quite compelling, I actually came from the travel industry. I'd had an 18, 19-year business development career in the travel industry. So when I landed in the construction industry, one of the first things I did, to learn a new product, I'd never heard of a mast climber, mast climbing work platform, never heard of it at all. But my job was to sell it and develop the market. So obviously what you do is you go out and ask questions. So I spent the first 6 months of my journey, if you like, just going out to sites, asking why they're scaffolded, asking why they haven't mast climbed. And you kind of build up a list of what I now call my myths when I go out and present CPDs. When you regularly go, oh, because mast climbers can't do that, or they can't do this. when actually the truth is they can get round balconies, or they can get into recess areas, or go around corners, or carry over 4 tons of weight, or have people at multiple levels of the building. All these different things that effectively I call them myths. So, when it comes to kind of understanding change, I think that's been a huge part of what my sales process is understanding resistance to change. Because, people, every human behavior, there's a reason behind it. So, my advice is to then start looking at the motivations behind certain decisions that go on in the industry. And obviously, this doesn't have to, to be down to the product that I sell, but this is advice to anybody in the industry as we look at what seniority of the person is that's making the decision, what information they have in front of them at the time, and whether it's stick with what you know because I think it worked last time, or it wasn't too bad last time, or actually where are they on that innovation journey? How important is the saving the time and the money, and how do we address any perceived risk in changing of significant elements of the strategy? So a lot to run at.
So, Rob, thank you very much for coming on board today. To anyone watching, and I know I can see there's like 30 or 40 people coming in and out at any one time. We are talking today about construction matters, changes in the construction industry, and whether or not they're scared to either move forward or even look back at what was working better before. Rob, can you explain to me your product set and what BFT actually provides?
Certainly, yes. So for those on the stream, they can see in my background a horizontal platform that is attached to 2 masts that go up and down the building. So effectively, in a nutshell, a mast climbing work platform is a fully customizable platform that goes up and down to provide vertical access to a building. The Americans call it motorized scaffolding, and that's a really good way of thinking about what it is. So instead of having a scaffolding up your building that's got multiple lifts on it, you've got one platform that's then got a control panel where the operators then power it up like a lift, so they just press up and they go to exactly the height of the works that then need to be done. So lots of different adaptations and configurations. That's one of the myths that I spoke to already, in terms of people just think sometimes it's a straight platform and that's all it is. There's lots of different shapes of the buildings that we can get to these days, but ultimately it's a faster, safer and cheaper alternative to traditional scaffolding.
It's cheaper, you say. That's going to appeal to a lot of people. How is it cheaper? It seems to provide more facility than traditional scaffolding does.
Yeah, which in theory should make my job easier from the selling of the proposition. But
Yes.
that's what makes this topic of conversation intriguing about change. Because if you take an 18-story tower block, so a very typical block would be needing for remediation these days, the cost to scaffold that versus the cost of mast climbers could be a difference of about £300,000 to £400,000.
Good Lord.
The scaffolding being the more expensive £700,000-800,000, the mast climbers being the cheaper £350,000-400,000, as complete ballpark figures as to what you typically get on these sort of size projects.
So I have to ask, why the dramatic difference in cost? Surely with newer technologies, motorized climbing processes, staffs and so on. So what do you call those? The vertical portions. The mast, thank you. That sounds like it's an expensive proposition.
And maybe that's part of the myth, that people assume that, oh God, it's different. It's going to be more expensive because it's faster and it's got, it's safer, and we'll go on to the benefits to residents, hopefully in due course as well. But in essence, there's less labour involved in installing the mast climber, and the team will install a mast climber like the one behind me in 2 to 3 working days, where the equivalent in scaffolding is 3 to 4 weeks for that elevation. So when you reduce the amount of labour and you reduce the time of installation, that has a knock-on effect, obviously, in terms of the cost savings that can be delivered. But I think, as to my earlier part of the introduction, it's understanding the real motivations behind whoever is procuring this that's becoming our particular interest and challenge. Because when I speak to the large housing associations, any owner of a building that's 12 stories and higher, who would be my core target audience, Yet quite often the councils they're not the ones procuring the solution, and that goes down to a contractor. Now the contractor isn't always incentivized to go out and buy the right solution, as in the low cost solution.
Yeah, we've heard
Often
this before.
they're incentivized to stay with a higher cost solution, and they justify it through different means of these myths of saying, oh, but a mast climber can't do X or Y.
So mast climbing, is it new to the UK? Because I think I may have seen one or two of these around. It's not something I see always on my skyline.
Yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to introduce a term called conscious bias, which I think really applies here. I've done many a CPD session out with contractors, and I challenge them on this: that you go home today, come back into work tomorrow. I'm at a conference in London tomorrow. I'll be on the train in, and I guarantee that I will see at least one building site using mast climbers on that train journey in. So the idea of conscious bias, you're used to seeing scaffolding. Okay?
Yes.
That's everywhere. You'll always see it. Your brain will, oh yeah, another one scaffold. No, but because mast climbers, it's not necessarily in your conscious mindset at the moment. A site that doesn't get wrapped in scaffolding probably has mast climbers. You may not see the mast climbers because they are far less intrusive, and thus it doesn't register with you. That site's using mast climbers. So hopefully after the conversation we had today, if you were to drive, or jump on a train going to any major town or city up and down the country, I do believe that you will actually see sites doing mast climbers. So they're not completely unusual.
Now, in one of our other sessions, Hamish and I have, it's called Cladding Matters. And in Cladding Matters, a large number of buildings are either on the cusp of or actually are undergoing renovation works, reparation works. And they usually involve shrouding the entire thing in a horrendous which means that the quality of life of the residents much reduced, and all the rest of it. I assume this sort of stuff isn't relevant with mast climbers.
No, one of the huge benefits of mast climbers to what I call live residential building, with residents in situ, is exactly that. If we look at three key areas, so privacy, security, and mental well-being, and we'll start with the latter, an area I'm particularly passionate in. But the mental well-being, when you wrap a building in scaffolding, even if you use the very lightest of debris netting on the outside of that scaffold, you're still reducing the daylight into the building by about 33%. So that resident is now living in darkness. Now, we've just come out of January and February, some of the darkest months. I struggle, God knows what it's like behind, the scaffolding of some of these residents. I've interviewed some residents, so I understand some of these challenges. But it's energy costs. They have to have their lights on, a lot more just to be able to then work from home or do, their general daily functions. If you add to the fact that there's now a giant climbing frame around the building for security and privacy, if I've bought a flat on the 10th floor to enjoy the views of wherever I'm looking out from, but now I've got a climbing frame around it, anyone can walk past my window at any time. That's it's a hell of a different mindset change.
Hamish, it does appear to be a radical technology. I'm surprised it isn't being used everywhere, frankly, because of the cost savings.
Well, I think one of the interesting aspects that we've had over time, Gareth, is it 2 years we've been working together? I don't know if it is that, but it's certainly darn close, is the fact that we've tried in whatever we've been doing to create an awareness in people's minds as to various aspects out there. Now, sadly, it seems since the arrival of this current government, a lot of that time has been spent on almost wistful thinking to a certain extent, and then darn condemnation to the other extent, because we just didn't seem to be going anywhere. Now it's getting refreshing within the last 2 weeks. In fact, when we look at this, we've got ideas like Rob's bringing to the table and saying, hey, look at this idea. We had Frank last week saying, hey, look, we've got this great idea to do with water. We've got this idea to do with drainage. We've got the likes of Steve Steve, who will be with us on Friday to do with the cladding matters, and they're getting the quality standard. They're getting people to at last looking at the quality standard. And I think just by drawing people's attention, I mean, it's quite astounding. I haven't yet seen, I'd love to look at a building which actually got the mass builders in process actually sort of doing. I haven't actually seen any yet. Mind you, I don't do much traveling. In fairness, I have to admit, Rob will get around the countryside a little. Perhaps you, Gareth, you're next sort of moving there, but it's trying to create awareness in the minds of people. And
well, I was driving because I was performing in a gig in London on Saturday, and I do remember driving by a building that had two things up the front, much the same way as that. And now I know what it is. Yeah, it strikes me as obvious. Why it's crazy. I mean, Rob, the setup time for one of these things is how long would you say for a normal residential block?
So for a normal residential block, worst case scenario, that platform will be set up to full height in 3 days.
That's crazy. And compare that with scaffolding?
Anywhere between 3 to 4 weeks for the same identical elevation. So if you times that, if that's a beautifully square building and you've got 4 elevations,
right,
then the saving is approximately kind of 80 days worth of disruption to the residents before the work can start on the scaffolding. But bear in mind, once we've installed position 1 on the mast climber, they can start working on day 4 whilst we're installing the next elevation ready to go. So program time is significantly reduced on the system as well.
And they are proven safety conscious product. They are, I mean, I know nothing about nothing, so forgive me if I speak out of turn. High winds and things like that, they're unaffected by it. I mean, there's less body to them, isn't there?
So yeah, when we say unaffected, 33.5 mile an hour is the wind off speed of a mast climber. So again, myths that exist that, oh no, we can't use them because you can't get work done, when it's windy. But if you look at the main construction sites, when the tower crane gets winded off at 32 mile an hour. Okay, so when the tower crane's off, all of a sudden the distribution of all materials around a site that's got scaffolding on it halts. Okay, now the key thing here with the mast climbers is the wind speed is measured at the working height, not at the top of the building. So if your 18-story building and, for example, a tower crane is there and it's been winded off, so we know it's 32 mile an hour at the top, it may only be 20 mile an hour at level 6 or at level 10. So right, therefore the work can continue very safely on it, because it's also important to know the reason for the wind off speed is nothing to do with the mechanical elements of it. So when Storm Eunice and these other storms that we get in January and February in the UK, there's no issues with any mast climbers during those, but they're designed to withhold wind speed significantly higher. But the reason we have a wind off speed is for if you, for example, standing 18 stories up on a mast climber and you stood side on into the wind with a cladding panel, yeah, then that could act as a kite effect, and thus that wouldn't be safe. So that's the reason behind a wind speed, because I think sometimes it's important to explain, well, why is a wind speed there, what's it governing against. But it absolutely is a myth that the mast climbers, that you would get less work done in this British climate because it looks more open. What you actually find when you speak to people who use them frequently and regularly, and we've done plenty of interviews with advocates of mast climbers, as much with CPDs for those who are less certain, is they actually get more work done. The quality of the work improves because I'm no longer working around scaffold trusses or trying to get materials to places in and around scaffold trusses. But the facade is much cleaner, and every trade is working at exactly the right height. So no hop ups, no hop downs. Exactly the right height, which means if you're laying bricks or you're putting panels in, you're doing it without stretching or reaching, and you're doing it at exactly the right height. So
that's incredible.
Safety improves, for the trades on site as well. So many benefits. But I guess it's then coming back to answering that question of, so why? Why aren't people using it more?
All right. Why aren't they bloody using it?
Well, I'll put something to the pair of you and discuss it from there. So I think there's a couple of things here. I think psychological safety is important with an organization. So what I mean by that is, in some organizations, if you were to come up with a new idea, they might have a say, okay, on your head be it. Now, suddenly, if I'm a junior QS, or maybe this is my first project manager position looking after a £10 million project, and I need this to go well in order to get my promotion to the £50 million project next time, am I going to go for something that I'm pretty damn sure works? I've seen other sites do it. Or am I going to stick to what I know and then no one's going to ask any questions? And I think this psychological safety is one of the things that is holding us back, that as people plan their careers and routes, that then if in certain organizations will hold them back. And I had a great quote, I won't name the company or the person, but a PM has turned around to me and credits part credits the success of his career for being one of the early adapters to mask timers, certainly in the UK. And he got his company using mask timers 12 years ago. And now it's the first thing they look at when it comes to remediation. But at the time, he was seen as a bit of a trailblazer in his organization. But now it's seen as a no-brainer.
Wow. Hamish, it seems that we have the technology. We can rebuild them.
Well, I think we're finding this in many aspects of the industry that we look at, whether we look at this side of it, with the physical involvement that Rob speaks about. I think what we're going to have to do, because we've just touched the surface, we're going to need to get Rob back. And what might be a good idea is get him on board with one of our Cladding Matters podcasts as well. And we make the contrast because Steve at this very moment is he's surrounded with shroud. He's got the scaffolding out there.
It's terrible.
So we can just have that would be an interesting conversation, Rob. So I mean that side alone, but there just seem to be so many advantages, and hopefully we can unravel a few of those over time, so we can make people more aware within the industry of just how significant a move this is, and the fact that it's been there for the length of time that it has, as Rob just sort of intimated. There's so much more to unfold here.
Well, look, it's incredible, Rob. Frankly, I'm very pleased you made the time to be with us. You've opened my eyes up to a technology. How long has it been around for, Rob?
It's been in the UK for over 30 years now, and right across Europe, right across North America. So yeah, this isn't new. This almost shouldn't be talked about as innovation. You know, it's one of those things that has been around for years and years. And constantly, is improving.
You can't be accused of being an early adopter. It's a tried and tested technology.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, look, Hamish, would you care to take us home, please?
Well, I think we've pretty well done that. I think what we've done is created the impetus, and hopefully we can actually take this on board, as we said, more a little bit further down the road, and explain some greater advantages. And hopefully get some more people understanding what an amazing concept this is. It's going to be a life-saving, it's cost-saving, and it's going to make such a significant difference to the cost of so many of these developments. And people saying, our manufacturing costs are so much higher. All these products are going up. Now, here we are, what we can see with Rob's solution here, get those sort of, get this particular type of solution up there, and what a difference it's actually going to sort of make to buildings of the future. And hopefully we'll actually sort of see it. That scaffolding won't be up there for 2 years or 2.5 years, or some of these daft times it's needing to stay up there for at the moment. To me, and I'm just looking at it, and we'll let Rob unfold this because there's so much it looks to me as though that scaffold, that is a platform. It's not like conventional scaffolding at all. That platform looks far more stable than conventional scaffolding. Anyway, for another day.
No, I totally agree with you. And Rob, do stay on. I've got a couple of ideas for you. But until next week, please. And in fact, no. Let me tell you what we've got lined up for you this week. We have tomorrow, IPSA Kind of Magic, the Association of Independent Search Agents, which Hamish happens to be a chairman of at present, we'll be talking more IPSA-related matters tomorrow. We get a very good audience for that. Wednesday, we'll have not Wednesday, that's Thursday, we will have Property Quorum, and on Friday we have Cladding Matters. Cladding Matters is where we actually talk about all the things that are holding back the improvement of safety in this country, both on cladding related and also other sides of safety. What happens when you take the cladding off and you realize that the what's underneath it isn't been built to quite the right standards after all, and all of that. But until next time, please keep looking forward, keep reaching for the stars, and please try and look after that mental health. Bye-bye now.